welcome to episode 25 of the Dose of Wonder podcast. I'm your host, Caitlin McCall. Have you ever made the mistake of getting super excited about something and then it totally backfires? Or you say something like, it can't get any better than this, and then right after your phone dies and you're stranded and it's like you jinxed it? On today's podcast, that's what we'll be exploring, jinxing and the science or psychology behind it. Like, why do we knock on wood or throw salt over our shoulder, even if we don't really believe in superstitions? A few years ago, my husband told me, don't say anything on social media until it's a done deal. That was about getting a new rescue dog. And so I didn't. I waited, and finally, when it seemed like it was going to be a done deal, and a flight had been arranged for the dog to come from another province, I thought, okay, I can say something now. So I did. I talked about us getting a rescue dog from Manitoba and that she'd be arriving on a specific date. And then the next day, boom. The rescue contacted us and said, bad news. Uh-oh. It turned out she was pregnant, so wouldn't be coming after all. And so the dreams and excitement of getting a new rescue dog slipped through our fingers as quickly as we'd first learned about her. Talk about disappointed. So I had to then tell everyone on social media, who were also excited for us, that sorry, no, we weren't getting that dog as planned after all. So I'd accidentally jinxed our dog adoption. So now I've learned my lesson, I think. The next time I get excited about something, my lips are sealed and I'm throwing away the key, which hopefully, fingers crossed, knock on wood, me saying just that little bit won't jinx things. My husband was like, see, what did I tell you? Do any of you believe in superstitious stuff like jinxes? I don't, normally, but this was a big, strong message. So it's kind of crazy how much these beliefs can really affect us, and how they can even affect how we perform when we're stressed or under pressure. Like maybe we have lucky socks, which we wear when we have an interview, and if we forget to wear our lucky socks one time and we don't get the job, then we've jinxed ourselves. But it's more than just a quirky habit. These beliefs have been around for centuries. In ancient Greece, they had the whole evil eye curse, and you can still buy evil eye amulets to protect yourself from bad luck. And pretty much every culture has some kind of tradition about avoiding things that might make spirits angry or something. It's like they were trying to have some control over a world that was totally unpredictable, especially back then, when it was like every little noise could have meant danger. So it makes sense that people would be extra cautious, and maybe come up with a few superstitions along the way. For some it might be a kind of survival mechanism, like better safe than sorry. But it's so weird how those fears from so long ago still kind of stick with us. So you might be wondering, how does a jinx actually work? It all comes down to attributing bad luck to something that you've said or done, even if it's totally random and it has nothing to do with what happened. Like the classic, you're having an amazing hair day, and you say it out loud, and then bam, a gust of wind and your hair is ruined. But why do we actually believe in being jinxed? Well, a lot of it has to do with our thinking, like cognitive biases, things like confirmation bias and availability heuristics. So with confirmation bias, that's when we only remember the times that things went wrong after we said something, which reinforces the whole jinx idea. So it's like we're only seeing the evidence that supports our belief. And then you have the availability heuristic, which is like if something bad happened recently, we think it's more common than it actually is, because you seem to hear about it frequently on the news from various places around the world. So jinxes feel more real because they're top of mind, which makes sense, doesn't it? But there's more to it than just those two things. There's a study from the University of Chicago, and they found that people actually believe bad things are more likely to happen after a jinx. And here's the crazy part. Doing things like knocking on wood made people feel less threatened by the jinx. It's like they were trying to ward it off. And it actually worked, according to the study. And it gets even more specific. Knocking downwards was more effective than knocking upwards. Isn't that interesting? It's so strange. And apparently even throwing a ball away from yourself helped, even though that's not a classic superstition. The researchers think it's about breaking the mental image of the bad thing actually happening. So it's like physically pushing the bad luck away. It reminds me of those amulets, again, that people wear to ward off evil. It's the same idea. You also have the superstition of spitting 3 times or throwing salt over your shoulder, or again, those evil eye charms. They're all about deflecting bad energy. It's like a universal instinct, almost like we're all programmed to do it. It just goes to show that these beliefs can have a real impact on how we feel, even if logically we know they're probably not real. It's a good reminder that we all have these biases. No matter how rational we think we are, we all have these little quirks. Like, do you think you can actually psych yourself out? Like, if you think you're going to mess up, you probably will. If you walk under a ladder and then you're convinced you're going to strike out in your baseball game, you're going to be so tense when you're up at bat that you'll probably swing too hard, or hesitate at the worst possible time. It's like your belief is actually creating the outcome. Your mind plays a powerful role. And there's actually research on this. There are studies, not just anecdotes, and they've shown that lucky charms can actually help people perform better, and feeling jinxes can make them do worse. It's like the opposite of a placebo effect, where if you believe something will hurt you, it actually does, even if it's all in your head. As I said, the mind is a powerful thing. So how do we get over this fear of being jinxed? Well, there are some techniques. Cognitive behavioral therapy can be helpful because it's about challenging those negative thoughts and coming up with other explanations. So instead of blaming a bad test score on a black cat, maybe you just didn't study enough. So you might just need to take responsibility. It's about focusing on what you can control. And building self-confidence is huge. If you believe in yourself, you're less likely to be swayed by those irrational fears. And also being in the present and using mindfulness to let go of some of those what-if worries. One article I read was talking about perspective. Sometimes bad things just happen. It's a part of life, and it's not always our fault. It's not because we forgot to knock on wood. Sometimes it's just random chance. Life is unpredictable, and blaming stuff on a jinx doesn't really help. It doesn't solve anything. So it's better to focus on learning from it and moving forward. So is jinxing actually real? Well, scientifically, probably not. But it feels real. The psychological effects are definitely real. Our beliefs really shape how we see the world. They shape our actions and even our experiences. It's amazing how much our thoughts can influence things, whether it's the fear of a jinx or the comfort of a lucky charm. These beliefs tell us a lot about how our minds work. I'm curious, listeners, do you have any personal rituals or superstitions that you find comfort in? Something that might be silly but makes you feel good and gives you a sense of control in high-stress situations, like important meetings or a job interview? Like maybe wearing some lucky socks while watching your favorite sports team. You know it doesn't actually affect the game, but it's more about the feeling it gives you that you're supporting them even though you're not there. It's funny how these little things can make such a big difference. It's not about proving or disproving jinxes. It's more about understanding why we do these things, understanding the psychology behind it and how they affect us. So even if we know it's not real science, we still find comfort in those little rituals. It's about that feeling of control when things feel chaotic. We want something to hold on to. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. If it makes you feel better, why not? It's about that balance between believing and being skeptical, like walking a tightrope between our rational and irrational selves. So that maybe the question isn't whether jinxing is scientifically real, but more about how these beliefs, even the weird or irrational ones, affect us. As I said, they shape how we experience things. This whole podcast has been about that, exploring those hidden forces that make us tick, from ancient superstitions to modern psychology. And it seems like there's way more to these beliefs than we realize. It makes you think that maybe there's a reason why these things have stuck around for so long. Like they're tapping into something deeper, something about how our minds work. So what about you? What's your thing? What little rituals make you feel better, even if you know it's probably not logical? And how does it affect what you do? That's something to think about. And that's it for this week's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and hopefully you found it an interesting exploration. Next week, I'll be talking about some self-help books for your mental health that I've read in the past couple of years that I really enjoyed, and it'll hopefully give you some books to add to your to-be-read pile. Until next time, thanks for listening, and don't forget to live with a dose of wonder.